Remember this diagram? Well, in this diagram, there is an important piece missing. I told you about the creation phase. That is, when we set the global object and the this keyword, and they equal each other. And then I told you that the second phase, which is the execution phase, is, well, we just run our code. Well, in this diagram, there's an important piece missing. This white line actually divides these two phases. And in the creation phase, we have one more step. We have something called hoisting. So let's look at what this does. Hoisting is the behavior of moving the variables or function declarations to the top of their respective environments during compilation phase. Variables are partially hoisted and function declarations are hoisted. All right, did you get any of that? No, that was a little bit confusing, so let's go through some code. If I create a console log here, and just to make things clean, I'll just say 1 like this, so we know what's happening. And in here, we'll have a variable, Teddy, and Teddy will equal to bear. It's a cute name. And then we'll also have a function, and let's say sing, and the sing function sings beautifully. Oh, la, la, la. Beautiful song. Now, hoisting, what it does during the creation phase of our global execution context, well, it does something like this. What do you think will happen if I console.log Teddy here? If I run this, I get undefined for Teddy. Okay, now this might not surprise you. And if you've been working with JavaScript, this is normal, right? It's undefined. But in most languages, it doesn't work like this. Because in JavaScript, I can also run the function like this, sing, even before I have written it down. If I click run, I see that I have oh la la la. And this is due to hoisting. It is the JavaScript engine allocating memory for the variables and functions that it sees in your code during the creation phase before it executes it. So what happens underneath the hood is that during the creation phase, the JavaScript engine is going to look through the code, and as soon as it sees two things, either the var keyword or the function keyword, it's going to say, oh, let me allocate some memory because this guy over here, he's gonna need some memory. So it's going to do something like this. It's going to say, hey, variable Teddy, that's going to be undefined. I don't know what it is yet, but I know that we're gonna have to have a variable Teddy, so assign it undefined for now. And that's an actual JavaScript type. It's a reserved word because it's something in JavaScript. And then same with function. It's almost like this function gets moved up here, saying, hey, there's a function here. Let's add this to memory because, well, we're going to use it. And underneath the hood, this is what it might look like with hoisting, where Teddy is now undefined because the JavaScript engine, when it executes the code, during the creation phase, we already knew that Teddy was going to be a variable. We don't know what it is yet. It is not bare, but it's undefined. So it gives us undefined. So that's what I mean when I said variables are partially hoisted. We hoist the variable, but not the right side, not the actual value. We just assign it undefined. Functions are fully hoisted. That means this function declaration was, during the creation phase, assigned a location in memory. And you can think of it this way, where anytime we call sing, we know where this piece of text is in memory, so that if we call sing, we can run that function. And as you can see, it's working. Now, let's test some of our assumptions that I just told you. If we move this back to where it was, and we remove Teddy undefined from here, and go back to that code, what I told you was that as soon as the JavaScript engine sees var or function, it's going to hoist it and make space for it in memory. So what if I do something like this, where I add a bracket to the function over here? So the JavaScript engine no longer sees function as the first word. Instead, it sees a bracket, then a function. What do you think will happen here? If I hit play, I get a reference error. Sing is not defined because it doesn't hoist it. Because the first thing it sees wasn't a var, wasn't a function, well, this was not hoisted. So we get sing is not defined. What about this? And this is something that we're going to talk about later on. But if I change this to a const, which is a new ES6 syntax. Now, with this const keyword or let, that doesn't get hoisted. Remember, the rule is it's either var or function. So as soon as it sees let, it actually will error out. Now, in this REPL, it won't give me an error, but if I open up the console here and copy our code and run it, I'll get Teddy is not defined. And in most languages where there isn't hoisting, that's what would happen. We wouldn't be able to use variables or functions before we've actually written them. The compiler won't know anything about it. Now, unlike what I told you initially, the compiler isn't actually moving these lines of code. It's not physically moving variable Teddy all the way up or function all the way up. It looks like it may, but what it's doing is simply having one pass through the code and saying reserve memory or assign memory into this space. If we look at our diagram, with hoisting, during our global execution phase, we're simply saying, hey, it looks like we're gonna have a few functions and a few variables. Can you allocate some memory for us here? Just get us ready for the program about to run. Therefore, when we see console log Teddy here, the JavaScript engine is, during its execution phase, is going to say, hey, can you grab Teddy from memory? And when it looks at Teddy in memory, it's assigned undefined for now because it hasn't been assigned a new value. And that is a key distinction, especially when it comes to functions. We have function declarations, like the one that we saw here, where function is the first word on a line, or we have something like function expressions. That is, we can create a variable sing2 that equals function. And this function is going to sing something else. Ooh la la. There you go. This is a function expression. This is a function declaration. Now, what do you think this piece of code does when it comes to hoisting? Well, during the creation phase, this variable is going to be hoisted up here, and it's going to be assigned undefined. So with the function expression, until the execution phase reaches it, that is, it has hoisted everything, and now we're in the second part where we start running the code line by line. Well, with a function expression, is only going to be run after it was defined. So I can't do sing2 here. I'll get an error. It's not a function. But if I move this line after we assign it, it's working for us. And if we go back and just console log sing2 instead of running it with the brackets, I get undefined because sing2 was hoisted. So to review, With our global execution context, we have a few things that happen. We have the global object and the this object during the creation phase that gets assigned. And then during the execution phase, we run our code. But it's important to remember that during this creation phase, we also have this act of hoisting. Something that's quite unique to JavaScript, where we move anytime we see the function or the var keywords as the first items on the line, we allocate space for them in our heap to make sure that the JavaScript engine is ready for the execution. So now that we've gotten that done, let's do a fun little exercise.